He watched Sarah laugh, her hand on another man's arm at the resort's pool bar. My chest tightened, a cold knot forming where my heart used to be. The bartender, sensing my unease, silently pushed a fresh Mai Tai my way. She already found herself a new horizon, didn't she? The man beside me chuckled, his gaze fixed on her. Some people just aren't built for loyalty. The sun dipped low, painting the Kona sky in shades of orange and purple. I guided the small inflatable boat toward the shore, the gentle lapping of the Pacific against the hull, a stark contrast to the rougher waters we'd left behind. Seattle's gray skies and the unspoken tensions that had grown between Sarah and me now felt distant, almost forgotten. This move was supposed to be a reset, a clean slate. 6 years of marriage had taught me that new horizons often carried familiar shadows. But here, under the Hawaiian sun, I allowed myself to hope. We had packed up our lives, traded the relentless drizzle of the Pacific Northwest for the year-round warmth of the Big Island. Sarah, a nurse, had quickly secured a position at Kona Community Hospital. Her schedule was demanding, but she embraced the work. I, a commodities broker, set up my new home office overlooking the ocean, trading futures before the rest of the world had even finished breakfast. Our three-bedroom condo felt expansive, a tangible sign of our commitment to this new life. "Oh, Mark, I'm so excited," Sarah had said, her voice light with a joy I hadn't heard in a while. We were standing on our lanai, the turquoise ocean stretching out before us. "I feel like our life is going to turn into a permanent vacation." I smiled, though my thoughts were more grounded. "I have a more than full-time job, Sarah. And yes, you have a tight schedule. We still have to maintain this new lifestyle." My words were meant to be practical, not dampening. This new lifestyle, after all, included the mortgage on this place and the cost of living on an island. It also included my secret account, a little nest egg I'd been growing for years, which Sarah didn't know about at the time. It was a safety net, I told myself, just in case. Our initial days settled into a rhythm. My mornings started before dawn, tracking global markets. Sarah's shifts often stretched into the evening. We ate fresh fish, took walks along the beach, and tried to forget the quiet arguments that used to punctuate our Seattle evenings. We were busy, which seemed to keep any old ghosts at bay. Then came the Pauhana night at our condo complex, a welcome gathering for new residents. The courtyard buzzed with chatter, the air thick with the smell of grilling fish and blooming plumeria. I watched Sarah mingle, her laugh carrying easily across the crowd. We met Gus and Leo first, a friendly, retired gay couple from San Francisco. Gus had a quick wit, and Leo possessed a calming presence. They'd lived in the Palms complex for years. "It's a good community here," Gus told us, gesturing with a glass of white wine. "Most of us have retired, but there's a younger crowd too." Next, we shook hands with Dale and Martha Miller. Dale was a builder from Texas, loud and hearty, with a permanent tan and a preference for bright Hawaiian shirts. Martha, his wife, was quieter, but her hand always seemed to find Dale's arm, a constant anchor. Both clearly enjoyed their whiskey, their glasses rarely empty. Further into the evening, we were introduced to Ben Carlson and Elsie Palmer. Ben, tall and impeccably dressed, called himself a relationship specialist, though he offered no further explanation. Elsie, a wealthy bank VP, was serious, her eyes sharp and assessing. She observed everyone, her smile faint and infrequent. I was talking with Dale about market trends when I saw Sarah across the courtyard. She was laughing, her head tilted back, her arm lightly touching the shoulder of a young man. He looked to be in his early 20s, tanned and muscular, with an easy smile. They were standing pretty close, their conversation animated. A pang of jealousy, sharp and unexpected, twisted in my gut. He introduced himself to someone nearby as a marine biologist. Ben Carlson, who had been standing beside me, cleared his throat. "That's Todd Johnson," he said, his voice low. "He's quite the resident Palms woman hunter." My eyes narrowed. I excused myself from Dale and walked purposefully towards Sarah. As I reached them, I wrapped an arm around Sarah's waist, pulling her gently but firmly against me, and kissed her cheek. She looked up, startled, then smiled. "Todd, this is my husband Mark," she said, her voice still holding the echo of laughter. I extended my hand to Todd, His grip was firm, but mine was, I knew, overly so. Good to meet you, I said, my tone a bit too even. Later, Gus found me at the bar nursing a beer. Don't worry about Todd, he said, a knowing look in his eye. He never preys on married people. Todd is a young, red-blooded heterosexual, but he has his own set of rules. Married women are definitely off limits to him. I nodded, taking a slow sip of my beer. Gus's words were meant to reassure, and perhaps they did, a little. But the image of Sarah laughing, her hand resting on Todd's arm, lingered. Trust, I knew, was a fragile thing. Easily broken, hard to repair. The memory hit me sometimes, unbidden, like a rogue wave breaking on a calm shore. It was years ago, a holiday party in Seattle. The office was too warm, the punch too strong. A coworker, Brenda, had laughed at my jokes, her hand lingering on my arm. Later, in a dim, unused storage room, it had happened quickly, a fleeting lapse in judgment. Sarah never knew. The guilt had been a dull ache, a secret I carried. Now as Sarah's schedule grew more demanding, as the Kona sun baked away the inhibitions of others, that ache resurfaced, sharper. Sarah came home exhausted from her nursing shifts, her scrubs smelling faintly of antiseptic and something sweet, like hand lotion. She'd drop her bag, kick off her shoes, and usually head straight for the couch. On her days off, she craved quiet, what she called vacation mode, which often meant reading by the pool or simply staring out at the ocean. Our easy conversations grew shorter, replaced by comfortable silences that sometimes felt too long. Todd Johnson became a regular fixture around the Palms complex. I'd see him jogging early mornings, his bare chest glistening with sweat, or by the communal grill, chatting with neighbors. Sometimes I'd catch him talking to Sarah, a casual exchange in the hallway or by the mailboxes. Always friendly, always smiling. Tell me, Mark, Ben Carlson asked one afternoon as we sat by the pool watching the waves break. He took a slow sip of his iced tea. What are the true foundations of your trust with Sarah? He spoke like a doctor delivering a diagnosis, his gaze steady, searching. I felt a prickle of discomfort, but also a strange sense of being understood. Ben's questions were pointed, but he made them sound like an invitation to introspection. My guilt about Brenda started to fester, twisting into something ugly. I found myself checking Sarah's phone, feeling a hot flush of shame each time, yet unable to stop. I'd glance at her text when she left the phone on the counter, try to recall who she'd called last. It was a compulsion, a silent betrayal I was committing against her, fueled by my own past. The hospital's organizing a dolphin boat trip next weekend, Sarah announced one evening, flipping through a local activities brochure. Todd mentioned he might go. We should too. It sounds fun. The casualness of her suggestion felt like a punch. I forced a smile. My gut twisted. Another afternoon, I watched them from our lanai. Sarah was by the pool, her hair still damp from a swim. Todd was leaning against a palm tree, laughing. Sarah's laugh, light and free, carried across the water. She threw her head back, her hand briefly touching his arm again. My stomach tightened. It was probably nothing, I told myself. Just friendly interaction in a laid-back place. But the image stuck. Out here, folks forget the rules they lived by back home, Mark, Ben said later, sensing my unease. We were having a drink on his lanai. Sun's hot, heads get fuzzy, things just happen. His words were a cynical echo of my own growing fears. That evening, I tried to bring it up to Sarah, keeping my voice light. Todd seems to be around a lot, I said as she was scrolling on her phone. He's a friendly guy, I guess. She looked up, a slight frown on her face. Oh, Mark, he's just friendly. You're being silly. He talks to everyone. Her dismissal felt like a door slamming shut. Later that week, a small argument flared up. It started with something trivial, a misunderstanding about who was supposed to pick up groceries. But beneath the surface, it was about me feeling unheard and her feeling nagged. We went to bed that night with a quiet resentment hanging between us. I found myself seeking out Ben Carlson more often. He listened, nodded, and offered observations that felt profound, even as they fed my anxieties. He painted a picture of paradise as a place where hidden desires could blossom, where commitments could unravel under the relentless sun. I started to believe him. At a dinner party thrown by Dale and Martha, the conversation drifted to life on the island. Elsie Palmer, Ben's wife, suddenly interjected, her voice cool and clear. It's easy to get swept away here, she said, looking pointedly across the table at Sarah and me. And when that happens, trust can be a very delicate thing. Her eyes held mine for a moment, a sliver of judgment there, before she turned back to her wineglass. A few days later, Sarah was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. I walked past, heading to the kitchen for a glass of water. A message popped up on her screen, something about tonight. Before I could register more, her thumb moved, quick as a hummingbird's wing, and the message was gone, deleted. My breath caught. I said nothing, but the image seared itself into my mind. I sought out Gus. We were sitting by the pool, watching the younger residents splash around. Gus, I began, my voice lower than usual. Do you ever worry about things out here? About people, Banesio? He considered my question, his eyes crinkling at the corners. This island, Mark, it shows you who you really are. And it shows you who the people around you really are, too. He took a slow breath. Trust is a two-way street, son. Always has been. You gotta decide if you're driving on it together or if someone's trying to take a different road. His words offered no easy answers, just a heavier weight on my shoulders. Later that day, as I walked back from the market, I saw them again. Todd and Sarah. They were by the small path leading to the beach, tucked slightly away from the main building monks. Their heads were close, their voices low. It looked like a private conversation. My stomach dropped. The condo felt too large, the silence too loud. I started charting Sarah's movements, a quiet, obsessive task. Her alone time on days off had a pattern. Thursday afternoons. She'd often say she was going for a walk, or to the library, or just out for some fresh air. It sounded innocent enough, but my gut told me otherwise. Ben Carlson, over coffee one morning, had shared some of his professional insights. People trying to hide something, Mark. They often stick to a routine, he'd explained, swirling his spoon through his cup. It feels safer. Look for consistency, then look for the small deviations. His words had a cold logic that appealed to my spiraling anxiety. A week later, I had spyware on Sarah's laptop. It took me an hour, sweating through the tutorial, feeling the prickle of shame, but the need to know overrode everything. I also found a way to link her phone's GPS to an app on mine. The guilt was a constant companion, a bitter taste in my mouth, yet the urge to expose the truth, whatever it was, drove me forward. The data started to trickle in. Her Thursday afternoons, for example. Instead of the library, the GPS showed her consistently at a secluded cove, a place I hadn't known existed. The spyware revealed messages, casual at first. Surf's up, you coming? And thinking about those reef fish from our last discussion. Then a more recent one, an undeniable slip. Can't wait for our private marine biology lesson, Todd. X. The X felt like a knife. Surf lessons, marine biology discussions, less, all of it. I tried to confront her indirectly, dropping hints. Did you have a good time at the library today? I'd ask, watching her face. She'd look at me, a flicker of something in her eyes, surprise, annoyance. Then she'd smile too brightly. Yes, it was nice to get out. Or, what's gotten into you, Mark? You're acting strange. Her defensiveness only solidified my suspicions. The tension between us became a living thing, a shadow stretching across every room. It finally broke one evening. We were talking about vacation plans, an argument about where to go that spiraled into something much deeper. It feels like you're always questioning me, Mark, she said, her voice rising. Like I have to justify every move I make. Maybe if you were a little more open, I retorted, the words sharper than I intended. I wouldn't have to. The fight wasn't about Todd, not explicitly, but it was about the crumbling trust, the invasion of privacy, the unspoken accusations. We went to bed without resolution, the silence between us heavy with unspoken accusations. The next Thursday, Sarah announced she was meeting her friend Lisa for dinner. Just a girls' night, she said, kissing my cheek, a gesture that felt hollow. My tracking app, however, showed her phone moving, not towards Lisa's downtown apartment, but east, towards the quieter residential side of Kona. My heart hammered. I grabbed my keys. I followed at a distance, the rental car's headlights off, my blood cold in my veins. The GPS led me to a small, unlit parking area near a stretch of black sand beach. I saw her car, a silver sedan, tucked beneath a cluster of palm trees. My hands trembled as I parked. 100 yards away, killed my engine, and waited. After a few minutes, I saw movement. Two figures emerged from the shadows of the palms, walking towards the water's edge. It was Sarah, unmistakable in her white sundress, and Todd. They stopped where the gentle waves met the sand, the moonlight casting long, distorted shadows. I watched, my breath caught in my throat, as Todd reached out, taking Sarah's hand. He pulled her closer, her body yielding easily into his. He leaned in and then, slowly, he kissed her. It was a long kiss, intimate, undeniable. My world fractured. I stayed there, hidden in the dark, watching until they separated, until they walked back to her car, until she drove away, alone. Then I drove home, the devastation, a physical ache in my chest, betrayal. It felt like a punch to the gut, leaving me gasping for air. The next morning I called Ben. He met me for coffee, his face a mask of concern. I laid it all out, the spying, the tracking, the kiss on the beach. He listened, nodding slowly, his eyes betraying no emotion. "I'm sorry, Mark," he said, his voice level. "It's never easy finding out the truth, but at least you know." His advice was cold, calculating. You need to decide what you want, retribution or a quiet exit. Either way, you hold the cards now. Elsie, Ben's wife, passed by our table, on her way to the ladies' room. Her gaze flickered to me, lingered for a fraction of a second, a hint of knowing in her eyes before she walked on. I wondered how much she truly understood. Later, I ran into Gus at the grocery store. He took one look at my face and knew. "Mark, you look like you've seen a ghost." I just shook my head. "Worse," I mumbled. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Sometimes, Mark, the truth ain't pretty, but it sets you free. Or it burns you down. You gotta choose which one it's gonna be. Free or burned down." The words echoed in my head. I started to think about exposure, not just for revenge, but to justify the raw, searing pain that consumed me, to make her feel even a fraction of what I was feeling. The condo felt like a cage, shrinking around me. I sat on the lanai, the ocean sounds a distant, mocking whisper, waiting. The sun had long set, plunging Kona into a humid darkness. Each minute Sarah was late felt like another twist of the knife. When her headlights finally swept across the driveway, I felt a surge of cold fury, quickly followed by a wave of raw hurt. She walked in, her keys jingling, a tired smile on her face. "Rough shift," she mumbled, heading for the kitchen. I stood in the living room, my voice flat, almost unrecognizable. "So marine biology, huh, Sarah? Or was it just biology?" She froze, her hand still on the refrigerator door. Her back was to me, her shoulders stiff. "What are you talking about, Mark?" Her voice was thin, an unconvincing attempt at innocence. "The text, the beach, the ex," I said, each word a hammer blow. "I saw you, Sarah, with Todd." She turned slowly, her face paling. For a moment she tried to maintain the lie, her eyes darting away. Then her composure cracked. Her shoulders slumped, and she started to cry, soft, choked sounds at first, then racking sobs. I, "I'm so sorry, Mark," she choked out. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." She confessed, her words tumbling out, laced with self-pity. Loneliness, my distance, her work schedule, the sun, the island, every excuse I had already played through in my mind. "Lonely?" I spat, the rage finally breaking through. "You think I haven't been lonely? You think I didn't notice you pulling away?" Years of unspoken grievances, of small slights and growing resentments, erupted. "You think this fixes anything, Mark? You think I wanted this?" She cried back, her voice hoarse, her face streaked with tears. The fight was ugly, raw, filled with accusations and defenses, a verbal battlefield where no one would win. When the air finally cleared heavy with the stench of our ruined marriage, I delivered the final blow. "I want you out, Sarah," I said, my voice empty. "Tonight. You can't stay here." She stared at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and despair. The next day, she packed a small bag. She moved in with Maria, a coworker from the hospital, a temporary arrangement until she figured things out. The condo felt even larger now, a cold, silent monument to our failure. News, as it always does in small communities, traveled fast. Within days, hushed whispers followed me at the pool, knowing glances were exchanged at the complex communal areas. Our perfect new life in Kona had shattered. Gus and Leo approached me one morning, their faces etched with concern. "Mark," we heard, Gus said, his voice soft. "This ain't easy. For either of you." Leo just nodded, his hand resting gently on my arm. They didn't pick sides, just offered a quiet understanding. Ben Carlson, however, was less subtle. He met me for lunch, offering what he called consolation. "You have every right to protect yourself, Mark," he said, pushing a plate of sushi across the table. "She violated the marriage contract, morally and legally. You need to consider all your options, assets, alimony. Don't let her walk away with what's yours." His words were like poison, tempting me with the promise of retribution. Elsie Palmer, Ben's wife, made her stance clear. I overheard her talking to Martha Miller by the mailboxes. "Honestly, Martha, some people have no shame. Coming to a new place, a fresh start, and throwing it all away for, well, you know." Elsie's gaze flickered to me, a silent affirmation of her support. Martha just nodded, sipping her ever-present iced tea. Todd Johnson, true to Ben's earlier description, vanished. His car was gone from the parking lot, his apartment dark. He had caused his drama and, like a ghost, simply evaporated. A hollow victory. That's what it felt like. I had confirmed my suspicions, exposed the betrayal, pushed her out. But the pain remained, a raw, gaping wound. It was a victory that left me bleeding. Sarah, I heard, was facing a silent ostracization from some of the condo residents. I saw her sometimes at the grocery store, her eyes downcast, moving quickly through the aisles. A part of me, the part that still loved her despite everything, felt a twinge of pity. But the larger part, the part consumed by betrayal, felt grim satisfaction. Sleep became a luxury. I lay awake, replaying every moment, every suspicious glance, every hurried text. The image of her and Todd on the beach, locked in an embrace under the moonlight, was burned into my mind. I started to gather evidence, meticulously, coldly. Bank statements, emails, phone records. I needed to protect my assets, my future, and especially my secret account. This was no longer just about pain. It was about justice. Sarah's messages started almost immediately. Short, pleading texts. "Mark, please, can we just talk? I made a mistake." Longer emails filled with regret, explanations, and promises. I read them all, a cold knot in my stomach, and then deleted them. My lawyer, a stern woman named Ms. Evans, who specialized in high-asset divorces, had advised me against any direct contact. "Any communication can be used against you, Mark," she'd said, her voice crisp and clear. Sarah had approached Gus, I heard. He'd seen her by the pool, looking distraught. "She asked if I'd talk to you," Gus told me later, his voice gentle. "Said she wanted to explain. I told her some things, Mark. They need to be said directly, between the two people involved." He hadn't interfered, just offered a neutral observation. Ms. Evans moved fast. Papers were filed. The legal machinery of divorce began to grind. Her goal was clear, a quick and decisive outcome, minimizing Sarah's claims. I felt a grim satisfaction in her efficiency. Sarah, meanwhile, seemed to be crumbling. The condo, her dream, our shared life, all gone. Her temporary arrangement with Maria couldn't be easy, and the legal fees were already piling up. Ben Carlson, ever the observant confidant, reinforced my resolve. "Don't fall for the crocodile tears, Mark," he advised over an expensive Kona coffee. She played her hand. Now she's trying to play the victim. It's a classic tactic to try and secure a better settlement. His words resonated with the hard-edged strategist I was becoming. I pushed emotions aside, focusing solely on the legal chessboard. Then came the news. Sarah lost her job at Kona Community Hospital. Gossip in the complex suggested it was a moral clause, a discreet dismissal related to the public scandal of our divorce. Her situation was dire. For a fleeting second, a flicker of guilt, sharp and unwelcome, pricked me. I remembered her enthusiasm for the new job, her tired but contented smile after a long shift. But then the image of Todd and her on the beach flashed in my mind, extinguishing the guilt, hardening my resolve. She had made her bed. Dale and Martha Miller, who had initially commiserated with me, seemed to soften their stance towards Sarah. I saw Martha talking to her one afternoon, a quiet exchange by the laundry room. Martha's expression was one of concern, not judgment. Even Dale, usually so boisterous, was uncharacteristically quiet when our paths crossed. Elsie Palmer, however, continued to watch. I overheard her talking to Martha one day, her voice low. Ben can be very persuasive, Elsie said, her eyes drifting towards where Ben was talking on his phone by the pool. He sees opportunities where others see only distress. A seed of doubt, small but persistent, began to sprout in my mind about Ben's motivations. The divorce proceedings were moving forward, slowly, painfully. Then a message from Sarah, sent directly to my personal email, bypassing the lawyers. It wasn't an apology, it was a threat. "You think you're the only one with secrets, Mark?" It read. "You push for unfair. I expose your secret account to the world. Don't think I don't know about it. Think about that, Mark." The words hit me like a physical blow. My secret account. The one I'd been nurturing for years, the one she supposedly knew nothing about. How did she know? Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at my throat. My safe haven, my last bastion of control, was exposed. I immediately called Ben. "She knows," I blurted out, skipping pleasantries. "About the account." Ben listened, his voice calm and measured. "Well, Mark, that certainly changes things. It means she's not as broken as she appears. She's fighting dirty." He paused, then his tone shifted, becoming more direct. "You need to secure those assets, make them untouchable. This isn't about divorce strategy anymore. It's about protection. Perhaps a more aggressive approach is warranted." His words, once comforting, now felt like a subtle prod towards something I wasn't ready for. But the fear of losing that account, that last shred of independence, was paramount. I became obsessed with protecting it, seeing it as my only true security in a world that had just been turned upside down. Life's costly choices unfold in unexpected ways, forcing us down paths we never imagined. Stick around to the end to see how my story and Sarah's ultimately played out. Sarah wasn't bluffing. Her lawyer, a sharp, unsmiling woman from Oahu, immediately introduced my secret account into the divorce proceedings. It was a calculated move, one that threw a wrench into Ms. Evans' plan for a quick settlement. The account, meant to be my safety net, was now a weapon aimed squarely at me. Panic set in. I immediately withdrew a substantial portion, converting it into a less traceable form, trying to bury it deeper. It felt like playing a desperate game of hide and seek with my own money. Ben, ever present, sensed my agitation. "A man in your position, Mark, needs to be smart. Protect what's yours," he'd said, his voice smooth. He then presented me with an exclusive investment opportunity, a fast-track venture in some distant, emerging market. "High returns," he promised, a way to offset any potential losses from the divorce. Blinded by a potent cocktail of rage, fear, and Ben's slick assurances, I committed a significant amount of the now exposed secret account to his scheme. I needed to win. I needed to secure my future, or what was left of it. Elsie Palmer, Ben's wife, seemed to develop an odd friendship with Gus. I'd see them talking, usually near the pool. One afternoon, Elsie made a comment to Gus, loud enough for me to catch a fragment. "Some people, Gus," she'd said, her voice dry, "they just know how to turn other people's misfortunes into their own good fortune." She shot a quick, pointed glance at Ben, who was deep in conversation with Dale. Gus's eyebrows raised slightly, but he said nothing. Gus later approached me, a concerned look on his face. "Mark," he began, his voice low, "you're putting a lot of faith in Ben. He's a sharp operator, but sometimes sharp operators aren't always looking out for your best interests. Just be careful, son." I shrugged off his advice. "Ben's a good man, Gus. He's helping me navigate this mess." I believed it then. Sarah's lawyer, meanwhile, continued her relentless digging. She uncovered the irregularities, the sudden withdrawal from my primary account, connecting the dots to the secret fund. The next court hearing was brutal. Our dirty laundry, aired for all to see, became the topic of hushed conversations throughout the complex. The judge looked tired. Sarah looked pale and thin. During a break in the proceedings, Sarah approached me, her eyes red-rimmed. "Mark," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I never meant to hurt you. Not like this." It wasn't a legal maneuver. It was raw, unexpected regret. For a fleeting moment, I saw the Sarah I had married, the woman who used to laugh so freely. A wave of vulnerability washed over me, a memory of our past, of better times before the betrayals. Ben Carlson, ever watchful, must have seen it. He quickly moved to my side, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Focus, Mark," he murmured, his voice firm. "You're almost there. Don't let her play on your emotions. Remember what she did." His words were a cold shower, snapping me back to the present, back to the fight. Elsie Palmer seemed to step up her quiet campaign. I overheard her talking to Martha Miller, sipping iced tea by the pool. "Some folks, Martha, they thrive on other people's misery," Elsie stated, her gaze sweeping over to Ben, who was now engaged in a lively conversation with Dale. "Ben's one of them, always looking for an angle." Martha, usually so passive, looked genuinely uneasy. Then the email arrived, a short, formal notice from the investment firm Ben had pushed me towards. "Significant market volatility, unforeseen complications. Your investment is at risk." The words blurred. My money, the secret account, in jeopardy. I stormed to Ben's condo, my blood boiling. He answered the door, looking calm, almost serene. "What the hell, Ben?" I demanded, waving the email. "My money. What happened?" He invited me in, gesturing to a chair. "Mark, sit down. Let's talk this through. The market is unpredictable. Geopolitical events. A new regulation that nobody saw coming. These things happen." He blamed everything but himself, deflecting with a practiced ease, a string of financial jargon I couldn't quite follow. He was an expert at making it sound like an unfortunate accident, a twist of fate. As I listened to his smooth explanations, a sickening realization dawned on me. I had been played. Not just by Sarah, who had betrayed my trust, but by Ben, who had manipulated my pain, my rage, for his own profit. My secret account, my last bastion of security, was now dangling precariously on the precipice of ruin. The second email arrived, stark and devoid of platitudes. The investment was gone. A total loss. "The money's just evaporated," I mumbled to myself, staring at the screen, the words blurring. My secret account, the one I had nurtured, the one I had risked, was now nothing but numbers on a screen, a ghost of what it had been. I found Ben Carlson on the golf course, his swing smooth and unhurried. Rage, cold and desperate, pulsed through me. "You snake!" I hissed, grabbing his arm, disrupting his backswing. "You took everything. It's all gone." He barely flinched. His eyes, usually so sharp, were flat, almost bored. "Mark, I told you, all investments carry risk. Market volatility. It's unfortunate, but these things happen." He pulled his arm away, then calmly struck his ball. It soared, perfectly straight, down the fairway. The utter lack of remorse, the cold denial, was chilling. By the next morning, Ben and Elsie's condo was empty, their cars gone. Ben Carlson had vanished from the Palms, leaving behind only wreckage. The full extent of his manipulation became horrifyingly clear. The investment opportunity was a sophisticated Ponzi scheme, one he'd likely run before. I was financially devastated, the carefully constructed edifice of my life crumbling. My divorce settlement, already contentious, was now a paltry sum compared to what I'd once possessed. Ms. Evans shook her head, her face grim. "There's nothing left to fight for, Mark," she'd said. "He cleaned you out." Sarah heard the news. Through the grapevine, I suppose. I saw her once at the grocery store. Her eyes met mine, and I saw a strange mix of emotions. Shock, a flicker of something like twisted justice, but also a profound, unsettling sorrow for my complete downfall. The affair had cost her much, but this was different. Elsie Palmer, however, made sure everyone knew the truth. After Ben disappeared, she called a small gathering of residents, a farewell of sorts, though Ben wasn't there. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. My husband, she began, her gaze sweeping over the familiar faces, is a con artist. He thrived on other people's misfortune, on their trust. He took Mark's money, just as he has taken from others before. Her admission hung heavy in the humid Kona air, a final public accounting of Ben's true nature. Gus and Leo, always dependable, offered what little comfort they could. Gus came to my lanai bringing a six-pack of beer. This is a tough break, Mark, he said, settling into a chair. But you got good folks around you. Don't forget that. Leo just nodded, a quiet, steady presence. Their kindness was a small anchor in the storm. I fell into a deep depression. The days blurred, marked only by sleepless nights and the relentless replay of my mistakes. My jealousy, my desire for revenge, my blind trust in Ben, it had all led me here. I saw how my own choices had created this ruin. Kona, once a symbol of a fresh start, was now a constant, painful reminder of my colossal failures. My reputation in the community was shattered. I was now a figure of pity, a cautionary tale. One afternoon, my phone rang. It was Sarah. Her voice was hesitant, almost fragile. Mark, she said, I'm sorry, really I am, about everything. It was a small gesture, unexpected. Part of me, the broken, weary part, wanted to reach out, to accept. But my pride, stubborn and unyielding, still stood in the way. I'll be fine, I said, my voice flat, and hung up. The thought of leaving Kona, of erasing this entire disastrous chapter, became a constant hum in my mind. There was nothing left here for me. The condo, once a symbol of hope, was now a tomb of lost dreams. I put it on the market, accepting a significant loss just to get rid of it. The sale was a final, painful severing of my last major tie to the paradise that had become my personal hell. Stripped of my wealth, my marriage, my dreams, I moved into a smaller, cheaper rental apartment on the outskirts of town. It was just a room, a bed, a small kitchen. Rock bottom. There was nowhere left to fall. The days in my small rental apartment were long, quiet. My new job was stocking shelves at a local grocery store, a stark contrast to the high-pressure world of commodities. The scent of fresh produce and cleaning supply replaced the crisp aroma of ocean air from my lanai. It was honest work, and it paid the rent. Frugal living became my new normal, a slow, methodical process of making ends meet. I spent my evenings alone, staring out at the small patch of concrete outside my window, wrestling with the tangled mess of my past. Anger still flared, hot and sharp, at Sarah's betrayal, at Ben's calculated cruelty. But beneath it, a deeper, more insidious regret began to fester. The bitter taste was not just from what others had done to me, but what I had done to myself. Gus was a steady anchor in my swirling thoughts. He'd stop by sometimes, bringing a bag of fresh mangoes or a cold soda. Ain't no easy path out of the hole you dug, Mark, he'd say, his voice low and kind. But you gotta start somewhere, and you're starting. That's what matters. His quiet wisdom was a balm. I began to see it, slowly, painfully. The corrosive nature of my own secrets, my paranoia, my infidelity with Brenda, long buried, now resurfaced. How could I have expected unwavering loyalty from Sarah when I hadn't offered it myself? My own actions had planted the seeds of distrust, had perhaps even created the distance that Sarah had used as an excuse. I wasn't entirely blameless. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, but it brought a strange sense of clarity. Sarah, meanwhile, had found stable employment at a smaller clinic on the other side of the island. I'd see her occasionally around Kona, usually at a distance, sometimes in a restaurant with a new group of friends. She looked healthier, more grounded. Our encounters, if they happened, were polite but distant, two strangers linked by a shared, painful history. She possessed a quiet strength I hadn't fully appreciated. Then one morning, I saw an article in the local paper. Financial advisor arrested in mainland fraud scheme. A mugshot of Ben Carlson stared back at me. He'd resurfaced in Arizona running another scam. A strange sense of vindication, cold and flat, washed over me. He'd paid a price. But it brought no real satisfaction, no true relief. My money was still gone. My life was still broken. The price I paid wasn't just financial. It was a complete dismantling of my identity. The successful commodities broker, the husband with the ocean view condo, the man planning a permanent vacation, all gone. My future plans had dissolved into thin air. I thought about trust, how fragile it was, how easily it fractured, broken by Sarah, by Ben, and by myself. I had wanted so badly to believe in the fresh start, but I had brought my old demons with me. I started making small efforts to mend fences. I apologized to Dale for my abruptness during the divorce, to Martha for my bitterness. Some were receptive, some were not. It was a slow, humbling process of earning back fragments of respect. In the evenings, I began to write, not for publication, just for myself. Journal entries, reflections, trying to trace the winding path that had led me from Seattle to this small room in Kona. It was a form of therapy, a way to make sense of the senseless, to give shape to the chaos. Slowly, imperceptibly, a quiet peace began to settle over me. The relentless pressure of wealth, the gnawing anxiety of suspicion, they were gone. My life was simpler, stripped bare. The bittersweet memories from my arrival in Kona now gained full context. They weren't just about leaving Seattle, but about the profound loss that had accompanied my arrival and the humble, painful beginning that followed. Some wounds, I realized, never fully heal. The scars remain, a constant reminder, but they can fade, allowing new growth, a tougher skin. Life goes on, not as a permanent vacation, but as a series of reckonings. The small, inflatable boat hummed gently, pushing through the calm water toward the Hawaiian shore. The sun, a molten orb, dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in the familiar hues of pink, purple, and orange. The white sand and black lava rocks, once symbols of a pristine new beginning, now shimmered with a different light, seen through eyes that had witnessed much. It was the same sunset, the same ocean, but I was not the same man who had arrived here months ago, brimming with hope and hidden secrets. I reflected on the intervening months, the affair, a slow-motion car crash of trust and deceit, the betrayals, first Sarah's, then Ben's, each a blow that had staggered me, the financial ruin that followed, stripping away not just my wealth, but the very identity I had constructed, the painful, often humiliating self-discovery that had forced me to confront my own flaws, my own contributions to the unraveling. I regret nothing, I thought, the words echoing in my mind. But the meaning of that phrase had profoundly changed. It was not a denial of the pain, the profound sorrow, or the mistakes. It was an acceptance of the brutal lessons learned, a recognition that every choice, every consequence, had shaped the man I had become. My life had indeed begun anew, just as I had hoped, but not in the way I had initially imagined, nor the way I would have chosen. There was a subtle beauty in this simpler, harder life. The pressure of maintaining an image, of chasing elusive wealth, was gone. There was a quiet grace and humility in making my own bed, in the honest sweat of physical labor. My days were no longer consumed by suspicion or the desperate need to control. I thought of Sarah, no longer with anger or bitterness. The raw wound had scarred over, leaving behind a dull ache, a quiet understanding of shared humanity and brokenness. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. I wondered about her new life, acknowledging that she too had paid a price, perhaps a different one, but a price nonetheless. We had both been stripped bare by the relentless Hawaiian sun, exposed to ourselves and each other. The faces of Gus and Leo came to mind, steady, unexpected anchors in my storm. Their quiet support, their simple kindness had been a lifeline. And then Ben Carlson, his memory a cold, stark reminder of how greed and manipulation could twist lives, turning paradise into a predatory landscape. He too had paid his price, albeit through a different kind of reckoning. I felt a sense of weary peace, having weathered the storm and come out the other side. Much had been stripped away. My wealth, my marriage, my illusions. But something essential had been gained. I knew now that trust, once broken, was fragile, a delicate thread that might never be fully mended. Yet forgiveness, even for oneself, was possible, a slow, arduous path, but one worth taking. The vastness of the ocean, stretching endlessly before me, mirrored the journey of my soul. Wide and sometimes lonely, it was ultimately resilient. The permanent vacation I had sought was an illusion, a childish dream. True life, with its inescapable ups and downs, its betrayals and small mercies, was always present, always demanding attention. As darkness covered my landing, I stepped onto the beach, the sand cool beneath my feet. I was an irrevocably changed man, carrying the weight and the hard-won wisdom of my Midwestern realism journey.